Welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to look at the selectors in CSS. Now, CSS rule consists of a selector and a declaration block. We write it as the selector is written here, pair of curly braces, and then the declaration block. And the declaration block within this curly brace is made up of the property and the value like this, and a colon and the value. If you have several properties and values, you use a semicolon to name other properties and other values. Now, when we talk about selectors, we're talking about what we use to select or specify the HTML element that you want to style. We have several types of selectors, and we are going to look at the basic ones in this lesson. We have the HTML element selector that we use to select elements based on the name of the HTML element. We also have the ID selector that we use to select an element based on the name, and we apply the style using the ID attribute on the start tag of the HTML element. We also have the class selector that selects an element based on the name of the selector, and then we apply it using the class attribute. Then we have a combinator selector that we use to specify a style based on the specified relationship between the elements. Then we have the pseudo class selector, which also selects elements based on the states of the element, and pseudo element selector selects and styles part of the element. We have the attribute selector that selects the element based on the attributes or other values of the attributes. So let's look at the HTML element selector. On our HTML file, we have the body element, we have the H1 element, we have the P element, we have the H2, we have the UL, we have LI. We can say we want to apply styles to each of these elements. So on our style sheet, we will put the selector we want, a pair of curly braces, the property we want to apply, and the value. Now for this lesson, do not bother about the properties and the values. We are going to look at each property and each value every week as we go along, right? So let's look at what the web page looks like in its basic form before we start applying styles. So this is what the web page looks like. This is how it presents without any style applied, just using HTML. Now we want to apply CSS. Let's say I want to change the style for the body element. For HTML element selector, you just write the name of the HTML element, a pair of curly braces, and now we'll put the property and then the value. Let's say I want to change the font. I'll use the font family property and I'll specify a value. I want to change the margin, I want to change the background color, and I want to change the text color. Then I want to apply a style to the H1 heading, and I want this to just be just the color, and I'll change the color to, I want to change that for H2, I want to change for P, or change for the UL tag, I'll remove the bullet, I'll change, let's make it square. So I have these styles for each of the elements, and because we already have the link tag here, and we already put the reference to the style sheet, when we come to our web page and we refresh, we have the style applied because we've already listed the style. So we can see how we change all of the presentation from what it was to what it is now. So this is how we use HTML selector by specifying the name of the HTML element, a pair of curly braces, then you put the rules for the properties and the value. Let's say we want to have a style that applies to more than one element. You can group your selectors like this: H1, H2, like a comma separated list. Let's say we just want to align the text to the center. So this is how we group elements, and when we come here and we refresh, we have it centered. So that is about the HTML element selector. We have an ID selector, and all that means is to put a hash sign. I'm going to do it somewhere here. You put a hash sign and then any name you want for the selector, then a pair of curly braces, and then the property and the value. So let's say we want to, on this HTML file, look at this link for mail to on the web page. We don't want the underline on the link. Let's say we want to use an ID selector to change this. We have this between the anchor tag. We can simply use the anchor tag, but we don't want it to apply to all the anchor tags. Now, one thing with the HTML element selector is that every H1 tag throughout the page or everywhere the file is referenced will have this style applied to it automatically. But if we don't want it to apply automatically, we want to control when to apply it and which tag to apply it to, then we use either the ID or the class. The ID is written with a hash sign like this or the number sign. You give it any name you want. So let me give it the name remove line, since what I want to do is remove the line. And what I want to remove here is the text decoration property, and I'll set it to none. Now, like I said earlier, forget about understanding what the property and the values mean for now. Just follow with what the types of selectors are, and then we'll look at each properties later. So remove line, but this will not automatically apply to the web page. We have to come to the web page, and then here we want to add ID attribute is equal to remove line, like this. So you put ID and then the name of the style. If this style were a different style, let's say remove underline, you come here and change the style to remove underline, okay? But we use the ID attribute. ID is equal to remove underline, and when we come to the web page and we refresh, the underline is removed. Now let's say we don't want it to be an ID selector. Now the thing with ID is that IDs are meant to be unique. When you have an ID attribute, it should apply to only one element. It's like a unique ID. But when you do it like this, it has unexpected side effects if you apply that ID to more than one element to style. You might get it working, you might have unexpected behavior. But when you begin to add JavaScript, it becomes complicated and your code begins to fail. So whenever you're using ID, just make sure that the style that you want to apply using the ID attribute is unique to one. For class, you change the pound sign or the number sign to a dot. Once you have a class selector, you use the class attributes to specify the style on the page. So now that I put a dot, if I refresh my web page, we will lose that style and it's back underlined. But if I come to my HTML file and I change this from ID to class, and I save this and refresh my web page, we'll have it applied again because this uses a class selector which uses a dot. Now class can be applied to several elements on the page. You just use the class attribute on the start tag of the element that you want the style applied to. So this is all about the selectors that we have. Let's look at what we call comments. Now in CSS, we can decide we don't want this style on the page. When you want to temporarily disable a style, you use something we call comments. Comments starts with a forward slash, an asterisk sign, and ends with an asterisk sign and a forward slash, like this. You can write a comment in any part, single line, multi-line. I can come here and say I want to put a comment here to say this will remove underlines from links, and I will end it here. Alright, so another use of comments is for leaving a note to yourself or to other developers. If you work in a team, you can use the comments to write references, author name, and anything you want on the page that the browser will ignore and see it as just a comment and not part of the code that should be executed. So this is where we end this lesson. Next week, we're going to look at the different properties that we use to set colors and backgrounds in CSS. Thank you and see you next week.